Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of my podcast, In the Mirror. I've probably have sat down several times trying to figure out the words to say when I come on here and talk. Part of me planned out exactly what the topic was and exactly what I wanted to say and how I was going to say it. And I thought that's how I wanted to approach it. And then I kind of realized somewhere along the way that that's not what this podcast is about, which I think it's probably best for me to explain the origin story. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering why I decided to start a podcast. And in order for me to tell that story, I feel like I have to backtrack just a couple of months. It was October, and at this point, I was still streaming live on Twitch, making comedy, gaming, just chatting, entertainment content. And I think somewhere along the way between making this content, moving all the way to California, chasing a dream that I think I wanted, I feel like I lost myself a little bit. And I don't know if any of you have experienced this where you kind of just need to take 300 steps back and just reevaluate your life a little bit. And it's a scary thing to do, especially when you're getting older, to take a full step back and just go like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Like, who am I? And I think I lived a little bit of an identity crisis. And I remember there'd be moments where, and I'm sure, I'm saying I'm sure because I hope you do it as well. And I don't want to feel left out, but I'm sure you all have looked in the mirror at some point and maybe questioned yourself or maybe gave yourself a little bit of a pep talk. I certainly have, not just over the last year, but I feel like during difficult moments of my life, I oftentimes find myself in the bathroom, probably wiping a tear, and then also looking at myself in the mirror and going like, "Who the fuck are you? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, get your shit together." You know, your 20s can be very confusing. Oh, I hate this so much. Oh, why is this so hard to talk about? See, this is what I mean. Maybe I just need notes. Let's backtrack. Maybe let's take a breath. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. I miss this. Like, I miss being able to sit in front of something and kind of just talk to myself. And somewhere along the way in the last couple of years, maybe it's from doing this internet shit, or maybe it's from just living life and experiencing new challenges and hurdles and dealing with new people and roommates and frustrations and, you know, just the tensions of life in general. You start to kind of lose a grasp of who you are and what you were in it to do from the beginning. So, yeah, this podcast is a way for me to talk to myself a little bit more and be more honest and transparent with the things that are going on in my life. And hopefully, in turn, it allows you all to reflect on things that are going on in your life as well. And that's kind of the goal, to embrace loneliness together, and trying to find your identity while you're doing it can be extremely difficult. Anyways, just consider this like a weekly pep talk to one another, because I feel like sometimes we need to hear it not just from ourselves but from others. And if no one's going to do it for you, might as well be me sitting here with a microphone and headphones starting a podcast in his bedroom acting like he knows what he's talking about, when in reality, let's be real, it's our 20s. No one knows fucking anything. Today, I wanted to talk about how to show up for yourself. And the irony of this topic is it is the day before this podcast comes out, and I am just now recording this episode. And I think a lot of the reasons that is the case is I've had a really hard time showing up for myself in the last couple years. And externally, I think a lot of people would look at me and go, "What do you mean? Like, even on the difficult days, you still find a way to post videos or post content or even just get a workout in or write and journal." And I look at myself and I go, "But you don't get it." Like, I don't think that going through the routine and doing the motions is the same thing as showing up for yourself. And let me explain. So, I actually journaled about this today. There was a time in 2020 I had just gone through a really difficult breakup, and obviously COVID kind of took over the world, and I decided, you know what? Like, I'm going to use this time to really better myself. I remember putting all my energy into being a runner as if I was going to like go run a marathon or something. I ran like 3 miles a day. We'll take it as a win. I started doing so many different things that I had never thought that I was really capable of, whether that be getting really involved in my fitness journey or even something as little as meditating every day. I started to wonder where this Superman human came from, to be honest, because I was on like Thanos level of work ethic in a way that I had never seen before. I guess this is what happens when your heart gets shattered into pieces, that you feel the need to like overwork yourself. And the weird part about that time in my life is I felt the most self disciplined that I had ever been my entire life. I could practically do anything on a routine. Like I would wake up at 4 a.m., go on a jog, go on a run, get a workout in, come home, shower, meditate, check emails, get work done, find time to watch like a midday documentary during lunch, and then still have a second half of the day. It just felt like a weird time in my life where I was capable of anything. And at the time, I thought that version of myself was just young. He just had a ton of energy. He knew how to show up for himself because he got like 8 hours of sleep. And now you get like 4 hours of sleep. And I'm sure that plays a little bit of a part. But I started to realize that that wasn't it. At the time, I don't think I've ever experienced anything in life that made me fear myself. And really, what I mean by this is I think a lot of people get nervous to show up for themselves because they're afraid of what they'll become. Now, I know a lot of people from the outside can say whatever they want. They're like, oh, you're doing so much, you're doing just enough. And I happen to compare myself to the version of myself that I had already seen in 2020 that was like hyper productive and super capable of everything and almost didn't have time in the day for relationships and friends in his life. And I think that's what scares me. For me, even though I loved feeling like The Rock conquering Hollywood movies, there was a part of me that hated how detached I was. I actually journaled about this morning, by the way. Hold up. Should I just read straight from my journal? It might be helpful. Let me choose like an excerpt, whatever the word is, from my journal to read for y'all. I think right now there's something that is holding me back from breaking through. I think I was a little bit afraid of who I became during that chapter of my life in 2020. I think I lost emotion. I felt detached from humanity a bit, but I was also so grounded. I think right now I'm trying to remind myself that not all things have to be identical. You can show up for yourself and also not lose your core. You can care for others, but don't be lost trying to guide them. I think that version of myself had direction. He knew exactly where he was going and how to get there. That version of yourself was abundant, but just remember to stop and smell the roses sometimes. At that time, you outgrew that version of yourself. And right now, you're outgrowing this version of yourself too. And that's okay. Jeez, I need to have my life figured out. I hate this so much. This is what I mean though. For me, my struggle with showing up for myself has always been rooted in fearing that I'm going to revert back to a version of myself that didn't know how to coexist work and play. Like, there was discipline without flexibility. And I think that's a really dangerous line. I think when I was younger, I felt so committed to being the best version of myself that in the process, I lost who I was at my core. You know, I don't think any of us want to wake up one day and hate the person that we are. I don't want to grow up to be someone that I criticized when I was a younger kid. You know, I don't want to grow up bitter and old and frustrated. But at the same time, I don't want to grow up and wonder, why didn't you work harder? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Like, why didn't you do the things that you said you were going to do to be the version of yourself that you aspired to be when you were like 8? I think it's really easy to get into the patterns of things. I know one of the ways I described showing up for myself so consistently was I started to feel a little bit robotic. Don't get it twisted though. I feel like we all need routine to live, you know? We all wake up, we all check our phones and doom scroll for like an hour, and then we go downstairs, have our same old breakfast that we have every single day, and then we get our day started. And that's okay. I think that is sometimes necessary to live life. But I think there's a difference between that and then feeling like you have to churn out the motions to churn out the motions. And I think in the process of that, you kind of come to a crossroads where you're asking yourself, how do you show up for yourself? And also let go of the fear that you might be doing it wrong. And I think that's why the better question we should all ask ourselves is not how to show up for ourselves, but how to show up for ourselves when we're fearful of who we'll become. And I don't think that's an easy question to answer. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people who just have a difficult time with this idea of perfection. And a lot of the times that they don't start anything is because they just want it to be perfect. Like, I think the best example that I can give for this in particular is someone who does art. And as an artist myself, as a filmmaker, as someone who's a little bit more creatively invested, I think it's really easy to fine tune and maybe over nitpick little details because every little detail in art matters. And so you think it's so important to make sure that everything lines up with what your vision is. I completely get it. It's part of our fulfillment to create honest and meaningful work, and little decisions impact that. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to execute and do things in a way that you feel is best. But I ask in return, at what cost? And to be honest, there's already so many cliche, like perfection quotes out there. Like, I feel like I should know like 5 million on the top of my head. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to exist. Perfection's overrated. Like, there's like 5 million of those out there, but it really is the truth. It doesn't have to be perfect. And think about it like this, right? A lot of people in their 20s want to go out to a bar or a club on a Friday night. And we know damn well that it's not going to be a perfect night. In fact, it's probably going to be miserable. You're probably going to throw up. You might have to hold a friend's hair in the bathroom while she pukes. But guess what? You still showed up and went out anyways because it was going to be a lot of fun. And I think that's what we kind of need to get into the perspective and the mindset of is it just has to happen. So I think if you're struggling with perfection, I think the solution to your problem is to let go of feeling like you have to do enough to get to where you want to get to. Now, I generally would never give this advice typically because I think the goal should always be progression, not like a fixed event, like you're not chasing a destination. But I do think it helps frame the mindset that could help motivate you to start showing up for yourself. I feel like this is going to make me sound terrible, but oh well. Chase outcomes. I know, crazy, right? Now, what do I mean by this? I feel like the meta of life, a little bit, at least in terms of self-improvement, is actually not chasing progress. I think putting yourself in a position to feel like you do a little bit more every day and to have self-growth is actually counterproductive to self-growth. Whereas if you fixate on chasing a specific outcome, even though, and I think this is the perspective that you need to have in order to like not feel jaded and not get yourself into like a lump of shit like I did, if you are chasing an outcome, in the event that you don't reach that goal, you shouldn't let that define whether or not you make it, if that makes sense. It's really used more as a training tool. The idea is not to get you to just be fixated on results, but to start putting yourself in a position to really want the end destination that you do steps 2, 3, and 4. Maybe you didn't get to 5 and 6, but you got way further than you did because you weren't overthinking the steps to get there. Here's a good example. A couple years ago, I wanted to gain some weight. That's right. My scrawny ass wanted to put on some more muscle. And it was very easy to overthink how to get to my goals. Do I eat more? Do I work out more? How much should I eat? How often should I work out? Do I still go on runs, or am I just going to lose weight because my metabolism's super high? Like, I got in my head really quickly about it. And someone had told me, I can't remember exactly who, not relevant, not important, but someone told me, don't overanalyze it. Like, don't overthink the work end of things. Just know you're trying to put on 20 pounds. So do what you have to do to put on 20 pounds. And I think in the process of that, I let go of the expectation of the work and just started to do anything to get to the goal. Now, I think where that can be dangerous, like I said before, is when you don't reach the goal. Sometimes it feels a little bit defeating. Like the self-validation end dies. And that's where I generally feel like I disagree with that advice. But I do think it's important to still frame it that way because I think it'll be a lot easier for people to just show up for themselves first. And that kind of reflects my journey, right? Whereas before, I did have that mindset. It was really easy to be like, yeah, I'll just do whatever to get to my goals. And then I kind of overdid it. And then in turn, now I'm reflecting back and going, maybe I should have allowed myself the flexibility to still be human. Okay, but here's the honest to God's truth. Because as much as I can sit here and talk to a mirror and tell myself to my face that these are the things that I need to do in order to show up for myself, I think it's just as important to realize that that looks differently for everyone. I think this is the really fascinating part about our 20s because some of us make those decisions to show up for ourselves out of urgency. Others based on comparison, like we want to one up someone. And I don't think that there's a right way to look at it. I think everybody's ability and desire to show up for themselves comes when they're ready to show up. For me, I needed to feel so detached from the identity that I was growing into for me to realize that this was not the direction I wanted to go in. And I think that's okay. I mean, this is the chapter in our lives where I feel like we learn and grow the most. And growth doesn't necessarily mean having good things happen to us. I think oftentimes that's what we imagine growth to be, like stepping forward. But I think in the context of this, how to show up for yourself, overcoming your own fear, a lot of it is redefining what your identity is, and also based off the experiences in our lives, some of that is reaffirming what our identity is. I think for a really long time, I've always known who I was, but to reshape that, to remold that, to find out how to show up for yourself in ways that you didn't show up for yourself 10 years ago. At the end of the day, give yourself the grace to show up for yourself at your own pace and show up for yourself in the ways that you need for you. And sometimes that doesn't look the same this year as it did 5 years ago. And that's okay. I think what's best for you can change. It changed for me. My identity has been reaffirmed in so many ways. Even though I've always known who I was, being reaffirmed in what I need to show up for myself. I recognize that showing up for myself doesn't just mean discipline. It means also finding ways to show up for myself emotionally. To be able to find that balance for yourself takes time, takes energy, takes maybe a lot of fuck ups and letdowns and emotional turmoil. You know, maybe you need to have a couple relationships fall apart in the process, but I think that's the part of life that is so beautiful that we don't talk about enough. Is there anything else I want to talk about on this podcast today? Oh my God, I'm finally reading my notes and realizing how many things I left out of this conversation. But because we're talking about this topic, I think it's only right that we recognize that perfection is not the most important thing. And just because I missed a couple things doesn't mean I can't talk about them next week. So yeah, I guess that will end the podcast for today. What's the thing that people do at the end of podcasts? If you like the video or wherever you're streaming from, leave a like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you think. And new episodes every Friday, right here in the mirror. All right. Peace.